Yes, I think we can move on to the very gist of today's meeting. For this session, we are very honored to be joined by our colleagues and experts from victim support, Slachtofferhulp. I've been practicing in the Netherlands, as well as victim support Northern Ireland. We will start with victim support from the Netherlands, and I will just very briefly introduce our speakers. So we are joined by Judge Rosa Jansen, who since 2017 is the president of the board of directors of Victim Support the Netherlands and the Foundation for Restorative Justice. We are also joined by Edward van der Krauk, who is the managing director of Victim Support in the Netherlands. And finally, we are joined by Veronique Hogendorn, who currently works with the innovation team in Victim Support in the Netherlands in developing new ways of helping the victims. And I will now pass it on to you, and then I will introduce the colleagues from the Northern Ireland at the beginning of their presentation. So the way we are going to do this, we have 2 hours. The first hour is dedicated to victim support in the Netherlands, and the second hour is dedicated to victim support in Northern Ireland. Both will first do a sort of presentation, and then we will also, in both cases, have time for questions and more interaction, hopefully. All right. Over to...
Yes, let's
Rosa.
start.
Very well.
I had a very important task today to introduce my colleagues, but you already did, so that makes it easy for me to do so. But I think Veronique and Edward and me, we are very glad that you are, because you have interest in participating in this workshop, and listen to the developments who are going on in the Netherlands, online and offline, and also in the supporting environment of victims. And Veronique was so kind because she is responsible for the innovative program together with some other colleagues to do the presentation. And Edward and myself, we are available for answering a lot of questions. So we hope that you have a great site event or workshop. We are glad to be here. Veronique?
Okay. Yeah, then I'm gonna take over. Great to be here. It's new for me to speak in for this Congress, so it's great to do so and tell you about our work. I'm gonna share my screen, so we have some, as we have some slides prepared for you. Just to check whether everybody sees my screen now. I see Sasha nodding, so I expect that it works.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm very sorry. So sorry to interrupt, Veronique. I forgot to say to our participants, if you have some questions during the presentation, please write them in the chat and then we will come back to them afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So yes, I'm going to talk to you about the innovation that we are doing at the moment in the Netherlands. And it all started off with to think about our innovation strategy. And actually in 2016, we had the backbone of our organization is the regular services that we provide. And we made an extra ring of services which contained of the more physical contact groups for fellow victims to help each other. That was the start with new type of services. But then in 2018, we did a lot of work to put extra rings of services around those regular services, and that those contained of more online services and also an online way of having contact with fellow victims. And to show you a little bit of what those online services contained, well, on the right side here, you see our website, our online platform. We made a whole new online platform. And as of today, last year, we did about 350,000 online services to victims. So that's next to our regular services. And on that online platform, the victims find several tools, experiences from other victims, but also tools like a chat, a web care, and we made a whole new registration system that actually stores the data and helps us to provide better services. There was 2 new services that were not robust enough from the first program. That was what we call in Holland the My environment, but it's a personal environment where you save the data that you want to save. So stuff you found on our website or advice you got, it's your own protected area. And also the online community. So that was really still in a very early stage, and that we took on to the next innovation program. And for that next innovation program, the board asked us to think about new innovations that was based on a couple of drivers. And there was 3 main drivers for the new innovation program. The first one was the world outside our own organization, is that the victims, not everybody is able to find their way in the world of systems and organizations which offer help, or don't want to find their way in with all the more services. And we do want to cater for them. We do also want to offer help. And how do you do that? In Holland, in the society, there's lots of willingness to help. That's quite a considerable amount of people that really are really able and want to help. But if we look at the volunteer work, which our organization thrives on, is that the enthusiasm for structural volunteer work is declining. So we do have a challenge there. The third driver was that we are dependent on the police and the public prosecution service for the intake, to get the victims into our systems. And on itself, that's fine, but we do see also a less willingness to report crime. So that makes it quite a situation that we want to be prepared for the future. So these drivers made us think about what would be the next step for our innovation strategy. And as said, we left the last innovation program with the online services. And for the next innovation program, we decided to develop more services that help the victim supporting environment to better help victims. So that was that is what we are doing now, which means that we do place the services in the domain of the victim. And an important element is that it's a range of services that are not instead of our regular services, but it's alongside, and especially to be able to reach those victims that we now currently don't reach with our regular offer. So having said that, what does that look like, and we started off by first of all developing or claiming what we call our vision, and that's the ambition that we have is that we want to empower the supporting environment of victims and their next of kin to help their nearest and dearest and also clients as well as possible. And we want to hand them or provide them with our expertise and the things that we've learned and that we know, so that they are able to help in a better way, or at least know more of the situation which is their beloved people are in. So we started off in the beginning of 2019, and we did a lot of research. We did a lot of interviews with professionals and in the social domain. We did a lot of, we visited organizations and talked to a lot of other organizations on this specific area. desk research on our own data. We did analysis. We did quite some online and offline experiments, small offline and online experience to validate our insights. And of course, we had a lot of consultations with people within our organization and also the ministry. And the first important step was that to see that there is a need for expertise or a lack of expertise in the victim's environment, and where we can offer our support. And we have, in that research, we also gained more insight into those needs. And one of the main things was that there's quite a difference between the social and the professional environment, as the nature of the needs are quite different. If you look at the professional environment, they really want to know what our services contain of, and they have more desire for more knowledge about recognizing victims, or what to do if they have suspicions of that somebody has become a victim, and they want to know how to respond, but also where the boundaries are for their role. As for the social environment, it's a little bit different. They want to have a very simple structure, how to provide better support, really practical information. I think that's also something that's really in our Dutch culture. They want to have really clear-cut, practical information. How do I do this? Where do I find it? But also, how do I remain resilient as a support provider? Well, having said that, we have last February, on the European Day for the Victim, we've introduced two online platforms, which I'm going to show you a little bit of. And the first one is the platform, what we call in our language, for the helpers. And the word "the," we put it there because we did some research on the name and the jargon, which is used by the social environment that helps victims or their friend or partner. And the small word "the" made that it's more, they see that it more as a group, and it also makes it less, how do you say this in English, less as an AIDS worker. So it comes more closer into the social environment. And we started off with the key insights that drove the development of this platform. And as we found that the helpers, the people in the social environment, so friends, family, partners, neighbors, have a lot of questions. They ask, the main question is, am I doing it right? Am I saying the right things? Where can I find the information? Or what is the victim going through? How would somebody else deal with this? So we took those questions very seriously to navigate, to develop our services. And what is an important thing what we realized along when we did all the experiments is that the helpers in the Netherlands, or the social environment, seeks support as if they were victims themselves. So they seek online as on the type of what happened to the person they're helping, and they're not seeking information for themselves. So that's a real thing to remember also when we started off with offering the services. And there was a big research in the Netherlands done by one of the universities, which looked at it from the other side. And it was what came out of that is that 80% of victims do seek support from friends and family. So from both sides, there was quite a need for that support, which was an important insight for us. Then we went from which insights we took those insights and we went more to a rationale. And of course, those questions were an important element. As anyone become a victim, but will you be there? So that's also a question to the environment. It's also something that you need to trigger, and they realize that there's lots of questions and concerns that they see themselves in a different world that they are normally in, and what can I do and how do I do it right? And we from Victim Support Netherlands can offer you those tools to help you to help the victim in a better way, or in a extended way, or just to help you to be reassured that you're doing the right thing. If you look at the structure of the platform, then it has a range you see underneath from left to right. On the left side, it's more the general services, and they are an answer to the lack of general knowledge and the more simple questions. And it moves over more to the right when where it's more specialist knowledge and a more complicated needs. And so it goes from they first and foremost want to know what they can do, and then they want simple guidelines, examples, customized advice, also on specific subjects like guilt and shame, victim blaming. Important part is also the setting boundaries and how can I stay strong. And on the far end, more the one-to-one counseling. And we developed a mini training with 7 steps to help them and give them more of a, on a daily basis, one-to-one help, and also a possibility to phone us and discuss where they want help with. So also to make the connection with our regular services. Well, if you look at how does that look, what does that look like in online? When here you see on the left side our website or our platform, and the first thing you see, which is the main entry points, are the checklists, and they're built around the different ways of, well, whether it was violence or fraud or sexual abuse. And on the right side, you just see a more zoomed in checklist where it takes you through the different stages or the different parts that you need to know, or you might not think of, to help you find your way in offering the best help. So what are the components for the current online platform? It's the checklist to get a rapid overview of what has to be done, the practical tips on to organize the way you can help, the customized advice, which is also lots of people want to know how, to which organization they should refer to, or which possibilities there are, or what would they need to think of in case of they want to refer. There's also, we had also already had the online community for victims, but we also started now with groups for helpers. And what was interesting is that those helpers, they want their own online community groups to discuss and seek recognition with other helpers. But they were also very keen to be part of the victim groups, not to share or react, but to actually see and to get, how do you say that, information on what type of questions or what type of feelings are there to think of, so in order to help their victim better. So we are starting to find a way to help them with that. As said, we developed a first online mini training. We are 7 steps towards better support, and we are now currently doing redesign, and we're going to go from one mini training to a basic module with then several modules that actually are give more depth in this specific themes. There's a way to get personal contact with us if you want to discuss the situation or discuss the case or the person you're helping with, or to see whether we can do something for you. And what also came about in our research in one of the experiments is that the people that we spoke to really would like short video clips with example scenarios. So we asked them whether it should be animation or what type of video clips, but they really want to see real people with different scenarios in how they could go about different subjects. So I have a small example for you, and that's one of the video clips we made. This one is about how to set the boundaries as a helper. So I would like to show you that.
Ik vind het zo fijn dat ik jouw dag kan bellen. Want ik merk dat de laatste tijd veel behoefte heb om te praten over wat er is gebeurd.
Ja, tuurlijk. Ik ben er heel graag voor je.
Ja.
Hoe kun je aangeven dat het je te veel wordt? 3 manieren om dat bespreekbaar te maken. 1. Leg uit wat je kunt bieden.
Ja, tuurlijk wil ik heel graag voor je zijn. Maar ja, ik merk wel dat het dat we wel heel vaak bellen. En dat het een beetje te veel wordt. Misschien kunnen we iets afspreken. Ja, dat we bijvoorbeeld 1 keer in de week een vast moment hebben dat we afspreken. En dat ik gewoon echt tijd voor je kan maken.
2. Spreek je zorg uit.
Ja, het is nu 2 maanden geleden gebeurd. En ik merk wel dat het niet goed met je gaat. Dus ik maak me een beetje zorgen. Ik heb het idee dat je vastloopt. Klopt dat?
Ja, ik kan het niet loslaten. Ik blijf er maar mee bezig.
3. Stel professionele hulp voor.
Fanny, eerlijk gezegd maak ik me een beetje zorgen. Ik denk dat er meer nodig is dan hulp van je vrienden. Is het een idee om andere hulp te zoeken via de huisarts?
Ja, nu je dit zo zegt. Ik zat daar zelf ook al aan te denken. Ik zal haar nu toch eens bellen morgen.
3 manieren hoe je kunt aangeven dat het je te veel wordt. 1. Leg uit wat je kunt bieden. 2. Spreek je zorg uit. 3. Stel professionele hulp voor. Op zoek naar meer tips? Kijk op slachtofferhulp.nl/voor-de-helpers.
Yes, this was one of the small video clips we made on this specific topic. But as I said, we did more of those video clips for example, on victim blaming, on how to respond in a proper manner. And as we are now speaking, we're also making video clips on more victim experiences, and then in combination with the helpers that they have. So video is we found out that video was really something that people were looking for. So going from there, we're going to the other platform that we launched, also a platform we launched last February on the European Day for Victims, and that's the platform for professionals, where we try to give knowledge and advice for professionals for them to improve their victim support if what they come across in their domain. And there was a couple of key insights that were quite different. It's a very diverse group, and they're very unaware of what Victim Support Netherlands can do for them. So they know that we're here and they know what we do for victims, but they don't realize that we actually have an offer for them as well, and they do need support, and it differences in needs. So there's groups that really like more help with their interview techniques, or they have what we call, I don't know if that's the right translation, but they say they're shy to help, shyness to help or to act. But there's also professionals that want more in-depth knowledge on victim rights, advice on personal policies they have in their organizations. But at present, it's very ad hoc. So we do get questions, and then we tried with this online platform to bundle those services more. Also there we went from the insights to a rationale, and what is important is that we recognize two big chunks, and that's case-based needs. So more on how can I support the victim, which sits across from the table from me, and what is my role, where does it end and where does it start? But also case overarching. So, and that's more of the organizations that come across victims on a more structural basis, or more structural than in the beginning, or could deal with victims like an amusement park, for example, if something goes wrong. And they sometimes have a need for additional knowledge. And what we would like to bundle in the online platform for professionals is that our expertise could be used by those professionals to help, to better help. Also here we have made a structure for the platform, and it goes from left to right, from more case-based services to more case overarching services. On the left side, it's more of how do I help a victim. There's more guidance on interview techniques, perspective for future actions. How can I consult with you as the expert on what would be best for my next step? A big item for professionals is referral. So what organizations are there, what do they do, but also what happens next with my client or with my patient. And we build a referral tool. So along a couple of questions, they get an advice. Something that they're very interested in is training. So we have an academy to support and train our own employees and colleagues. But there's also organizations outside that really would like us to train them. So we now have we've just started off, so not with training, but to do that for external groups. So we're now doing a training for the police, also a range of courses for the judicial system, and there's lots of need for more customized training. So we're looking more into that to see if we can maybe find an online module and then more trainings on the job. There's also structure in the structures organization that have more need for help when there's a crisis, or more advice for like protocols or policies. And on the right side, we found in our research it's also important to let them see where our expertise is built from. So where do we come from? What kind of research have we done? What kind of publications are interested, and what do we do on innovation? So the website for professionals looks on the homepage, on the landing page, looks like this. And also here, I would like to show you one small video. It's 60 seconds. And in a 60 seconds animation, we explain to the target group what Victim Support Netherlands can offer you as a professional. So I would like to show you that small video as well.
1 op de 5 Nederlanders wordt slachtoffer van een misdrijf, verkeersongeval of calamiteit. Ook in uw werk krijgt u wellicht met deze problematiek te maken. Slachtofferhulp Nederland verzorgt al meer dan 30 jaar praktische, emotionele en juridische ondersteuning. Gratis, 365 dagen per jaar, dag en nacht. Op het platform voor professionals delen wij onze expertise met u. U vindt daar handvatten voor gespreksvoering en nazorg. Zo ontdekt u eenvoudig hoe u in verschillende situaties kunt handelen. Is er behoefte aan meer of andere hulp? Met onze doorverwijstool vindt u binnen een paar klikken de juiste expert. Even ruggespraak over een casus? Bel vandaag nog met onze expertlijn voor overleg. Ook voor casusoverstijgende vraagstukken bent u bij ons aan het juiste adres. Zo adviseren we organisaties over hoe zij het slachtofferperspectief in hun beleid en werkwijze kunnen borgen. En zijn we partner voor gemeentes bij calamiteiten en crisismanagement. De Slachtofferhulp Academie verzorgt trainingen voor professionals. Bijvoorbeeld over rechten van slachtoffers en het effect van stress op communicatie. Op zoek naar verdieping van uw kennis over slachtofferschap? Op het platform vindt u onze laatste publicaties, onderzoeksprojecten en whitepapers. Maak gebruik van onze expertise. Ga naar slachtofferhulp.nl/professionals, zodat u nog beter kunt helpen. Slachtofferhulp Nederland. Vandaag verder.
Well, this animation is now on the website for, I think, a month or so, 2 months, and it's been watched quite often, and it gets a very high, how do you say that, score from professionals. So that was very nice to see, as we were really looking into how do we answer that question on that they don't know what we can offer them, and they have very short time. So it was good to see that we actually were able to do so. So if we look at the components now that where the online platform contains of, it's so that case-based, the main thing is the practical support, so the help that we give on interview techniques, signaling guides, stress tools, all those things we can provide to help a professional to give better help. An expert line, so they can call us and they have an immediate entrance to speak to one of our colleagues, and a referral tool on how to refer to another organization and what do they need to know on what happens next. And overarching, we give examples on how to establish a victim reporting point, the trainings we have, which we want to extend or take more modules, and our assistance during disasters. This is my last slide, just for you to realize. So we started off with our innovation in the last program for an online platform for all our online services for the target group, which are victims themselves. And now it's 3 platforms in one. So you see the entrance for victims, the entrance for helpers, and for professionals. And where we stand today, we've now launched in February, and we have quite some visitors and people who take the services, but we are now at the moment doing more of analysis and deeper research to see how we can actually extend the platforms or differentiate for different professions, about the professionals, and also to see for the social environment if there's differentiation needed. For example, the length of the help you give, or the complexity of the case you're helping. So we're actually looking now to get it more specific. And I think it's now time for questions, if there are any. I would stop sharing so I can see some more people.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Veronique.
Oh, I'm glad to see everybody is still here.
Yes. The exact same amount of participants we started with.
That's a good sign.
I think so. We do have a question in the chat. Maybe I can just read it out loud for everyone. It's from Lena Kaiser. I'll just read it out loud. It says, excellent new developments. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I have one question. How does the referral tool for the professionals work? Does it refer to SHN or to other agencies as well?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And no, of course, it also refers to other organizations as well. So we give a rare, we really look into with the tool, we ask the questions and we see which type of help and which organization fits that question the best. So not only to SHN.
Okay. We have another question. Also, at this point, if someone wants to raise their hand and unmute themselves and speak more in person, that's also good, but I will read from the chat for now. So the other one says innovative resources. So I guess with regard to innovative resources, have you found that has driven more victims to your service? So I guess, has there been an increase in people seeking out your service with the introduction of these new platforms?
So should I take it one, Veronique?
Yeah, that's fine.
It has more or less doubled. So in terms of regular services, we provide services for about 250,000 persons. So that is the normal regular services, face-to-face contacts. Regarding the online services, think of 300,000. So it's really a big potential of people who might have normally not have been in contact with our personal services.
Anything else to add, Veronique?
No, and I think with the last innovations with the platforms, it's also so it's that it does drive more victims to us, especially the online services which are directed directly to victims. But with the platform for professionals and helpers, we actually do it goes a different way. We actually want to hand out our expertise to help for others to help victims better if they are not at the first sight able or want to come to us, but it does increase the how you say it, the victims also to come to us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that makes sense. That it's also kind of the idea behind the helpers platform.
Yeah, so it goes two ways, so to speak.
Yes, thank you. Yasmina is asking whether there are materials available in English on this platform and whether they could have the presentation.
Yeah, of course you can have the presentation, but the materials on the website, except for these two videos, which we especially made for this presentation, they're all in Dutch.
But maybe I can add, Veronique, because we are on this moment translating materials. So I think short time we can send them to you, because we get more and more questions, and as you know, we speak Dutch. So and there is some materials I think in English on the website, but especially for this kind of questions is necessary to make special translations. So we are doing this on this moment.
Very well, thank you. And there is one more question, two more questions. One is, what kind of professionals are the experts in those two services, and are they volunteers?
Oh, we are still experimenting with that. So I think that's Knut is asking about the expert lines. So the telephone numbers that either professionals or people in the social environment call. They get into our. So first they get our first line people on the telephone, and then they have a small intake and they refer directly to the right person they should talk to. But it's also something which is still, I'm not saying under construction, but we're experimenting how that works and whether we should make a more direct line or maybe even regional line. So that's the next step.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, how many resources do you does it take to make that kind of an offer? You know, how many people are involved to establish and drive that these two services on a daily basis? You know that?
Yes. Veronique, shall I?
Yeah.
I think we are in different stages of development, if I may say so, where Veronique is talking about as a special program, as a special finance program, but at the end, and this program will be finished at the end of 2021. It has to be part of our regular work. So so I don't know exactly what you want, but if you look to Victim Support in Netherlands, on this moment we work, I think altogether we have 400, but Edward is correcting me, I think 470, 429, I think 430 permanent employees, and we are working with about 900 volunteers, and we also have a lot of trainees, I think 140 or something like that. So altogether, it's a big group of people we are dealing with. That's the human resources, and of course, it has also to do with money, as you can understand. But I can tell you that's maybe important to say that I think wherever in every country in the world we are talking about victim support, I think there is lack of money. You know, there's also more ambition than resources. So in fact, what we are dealing with on this moment is that in the Netherlands we are talking about official, according to the official papers of the government, that every year 4 million people become victim of a crime. And of course, that is stealing a bicycle. That's not a group we are helping, but till murder or something like that. And in fact, it's our ambition that we have to help every victim. No one can be held in the cold and left there. So we try to help them. But the budget is never growing in the same way as the number of victims. So that's the reason we try to be as smart as possible to develop possibilities to help people in this way. And I think we see that's maybe a smart way a slim way, because you ask people to work with us and even without a salary. But on the other way, you also see that the best way of helping others is the peer-to-peer contact. When you look to research, then you see that peer-to-peer contact helps the best. So it's also another reason that we work like this. But is that what your question are, or did you ask for euros?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's more like this project. How many people was employed? You know, how much do you need to have that kind of service? You know, it's 1-2 person can drive it, and also so it's just to get an impression on how much.
In the program, we work with a lot of people. Do you have the exact numbers in your head, Veronique?
But you mean the innovation program in total?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the innovation program, but the innovation program is more innovation than these two platforms. So I think I think in total we are here with around 35 people. Okay. But that's also the online community, the supporting services online. So the two platforms now I showed you are two of the 5 projects which are in the innovation program.
Okay. Okay.
And I thought you were specifically asking about the expert line. So the
also that.
numbers,
Both. Yeah.
And that's our regular call center. Call center is not the right word, but the people on the telephone who speak to the victims now, they also speak to the people who call up from professional sides and then make sure that they are referred quickly to the specific person for their specific question.
Yeah, and when you talk about that special, we call it contact and advisory center, and there work 45 people in this moment. They are sitting on the phone the whole day and answering all these questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think you had another question: is how do you count participants online? We the way we report is that we count the amount of services. So we have we made definitions for what a service is with the ministry, and so we count. But of course, in Google, we can also see the amount of sessions and the amount of visitors.
So it does count. For instance, if you go in and see one of the videos you have, is that count for one or where? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe for you, we developed together with the Ministry of Justice, but Edward, maybe you can say something about the framework for our services, dienstenkader. Because
we have a specific definitions document on the one side services, but on the other side also customer groups. And in terms of the online services, we have also established in what way we count, for example, website views versus services that people take. For example, if they stay for 30 seconds on the website, we can count it as an information service. If they fill in a certain form or an intake document, we can count it as an advisory service. So together with the government, we established the definitions for that. And maybe I can also take the next question on the income generating goal of the academy. No, it has not. So we are a foundation. We don't have any profit goals. So the academy as well, it goes the same for our other services. We provide them free. And for example, when we do something for the police, we just make sure that we have the cost that we normally would not make, because, for example, we have to hire an extra trainer or something, or we have to go somewhere and have the travel costs. That are the only costs that we bring them into costs. But for the rest, it's free of charge.
Very well, thank you. Are there any more questions?
May I add, Sandra, one extra thing? I think it was one of the questions in the beginning. I think that we have, what for us is very important, is one of the starting points, is that we only want to do things in which other organizations are not better, you know. So we work in a network, so we don't repeat things. To give you an idea, in the Netherlands we have a special organization for victims of human trafficking. Then we have contact with them about their knowledge and about their training and experiences, etc. But we don't take over. So we try to work all together in this framework, and that's also part of our referral system, that we look all the time, okay, shall we do this ourselves? For example, prevention. We are not the organization who do a lot about prevention, because we have done a lot of research and we have seen that people don't come to us for prevention. They prefer to go for prevention, for example, to the police or to other organizations. So that's what we do with small researchers all the time. We check what people expect from us, and in that way we can be as efficient as possible.
Thank you. Any more questions?
No, just a comment. I think it's very sympathetic service that you are establishing. It's very inspiring. Also, you have this goal to kind of make people more resilient towards that's how the whole society thing about making people more resilient to crisis and being a victim of crime and so on. And I think it's a very in line with that. You know, that's a way to kind of support that kind of development in society as well. So I think it's very brilliant. The reason why I ask so much about the resources is because you have this big organization in Holland, and in Denmark we are 1.5 person employed and 200 free volunteers. So for us to start something up, we always have to apply for money, blah 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 blah, and just to get a sense of what does it take when we will make our plans for growing and getting bigger in the future. So, but it's very inspiring. So thank you very much. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting what you say, because I think for us working like this has a more in-depth reason, because we think when we are, because I know that in the program is also a part we have left it now because we had too much work to do, but that's what was especially for the young ones, the youngsters. And what we want to do is making people aware of victimization and being a victim, so that it's easier for them maybe to stay away, maybe not be a suspect in society, let them learn together what happens and what it means and whatever, but make them more aware of what happens when you become a victim. And we think when you learn on an early age to help and to be there, that you get another society. So that's very important for us. So you're right, that's under it all the time. Make people responsibility, give people responsibility for society. That's right.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Veronique, did you still want to add something?
No, I just wanted to say to Knut, but maybe it's also very interesting for you as you're a smaller organization, but the steps that we made with the online to make our services also online made possible that we could upscale very quickly and reach out to more victims without having face-to-face contact. So right on time. It's very Dutch.
Perfect, perfect timing. If there are no more last minute questions or comments, I am going to thank Veronique, Edward, and Rosa so much, as well as all our participants. We have a small group of people, but we had, I think, quite a lively discussion. Thank you all very much. And we will now move on to Northern Ireland. I am going to unspotlight. 1 second. There we go. So from Northern Ireland, we are joined today by Jolena Flett and Margaret Johnston. Jolena is the head of services. Sorry, did someone try to say something? All good? Yes, sorry. Jolena is the head of services at Victim Support Northern Ireland. She oversees the operational delivery of direct support services. And Margaret is the learning and development manager at Victim Support Northern Ireland, and they are here today to talk about the community resiliency model. I will now pass it on to you. If you would like to further introduce yourselves, say a little more, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you. So we don't have a PowerPoint presentation because we're just not as organized as the Dutch. But we thought this would be a really good opportunity for us to introduce some of the work that we've been doing to help enhance our services. And this was work that we were doing pre-COVID that just happened to time nicely with all of the requirements that COVID has, I guess, imposed upon the world in terms of how we increase accessibility and how we become more effective at supporting people when we don't necessarily have an opportunity to meet with them face to face. So just a little bit about us. We are just turning 40 years old this year, so a landmark birthday for us this year. The party we've had to reschedule 3 times will hopefully be happening in September, but really this has been a year of reflection for us in understanding how we started and where we would like to go as we progress in our journey and as we continue to meet the needs of victims within Northern Ireland. So Victim Support Northern Ireland started within a residential area from a community group that saw people being affected by crime and really wanting to help the hurt in their community. And so it's always been based on volunteers, and the driving philosophy has always been you see hurt in the community, and as part of that community you want to respond to that and help restoration. And so it grew from there and very much embedded in a volunteer-led philosophy. So we have a group of employees of about 60, and all of that structure is based on helping support volunteers provide the direct services to victims. So we cover all of Northern Ireland, which has a population of roughly 1.9 million, kind of depending on which census you're looking at. And we would receive referrals directly from the PSNI, the Police Service of Northern Ireland. So every 24 hours, we would receive any crime that's been reported to the police directly, and would then reach out and make phone calls. We also receive referrals through people, self-referrals, or through other services that may be aware of us, like social services or other charitable groups that make connections. So we make contact with roughly 48,000 people per year in terms of offering service. So we started very much with the psychological first aid model. And that was because as a volunteer organization, we have roughly 180 volunteers, well, 130 at the moment. And out of that, we have 80 that are consistently active at any given time. So, you know, as with volunteers, people who go on holiday and have to take time out, or if you have students who maybe volunteer during term time or out of term time. So we have a solid group of 80 that continue to provide services. And so we focus very much with the psychological first aid model on the impact of the trauma of what has happened to them, rather than being able to maybe delve deeper into some of the more emotional trauma and counseling perspective. So we very much are focusing on what are your options as a victim of crime, how can we help you access those options, and providing a safe and confidential space that's free of charge to be able to allow that person to talk about that and talk through that. One of the anecdotal things that we started to hear was that volunteers were very frustrated that we couldn't offer people more than just what would be called a listening ear service. So they didn't feel that that was tangible enough when at the end of an hour session, you're telling someone, right, I've been able to listen to you. And now you have to go back out into that world. And for some people that was fine. For some people it was very straightforward, and they just needed to know what are my support options? How do I access them? What do we do here? So one of the tangible things we can offer is helping people apply to our compensation scheme. However, if maybe someone didn't want to do that or didn't wasn't eligible to apply for that, volunteers started to feel frustrated that they couldn't do more, that people still felt, quite traumatized, and they didn't feel like they were giving them anything to take with them other than maybe leaflets of support. And particularly because our counseling services have quite significant waiting lists, mental health issues within Northern Ireland, obviously a lot related to conflict, trauma, and all of the issues that arise from there means that there's a lot of pressure on mental health services, both in the charitable sector, in the private sector, and within the NHS. So someone could be waiting 6 to 8 months before they actually get an appointment with a qualified counselor. So we started to look at how do we enhance our services, and part of that research, we were looking at things such as cognitive behavioral therapy, but what is it that we could do that would be viable for us in terms of a volunteer organization with limited financial resources? How do we maintain training and make sure that we have a certain level of quality and consistency within the sessions? And also, as we started to introduce things like our online chat and our telephone sessions, so not everything was going to be face-to-face, which became much more relevant as COVID began introducing itself. So, in 2018, 2019, we started looking at what was available out there, and we discovered a model that had been developed by the Trauma Resource Institute in the United States called the Community Resiliency Model. And it became something that was more and more viable for us to be able to actually start enhancing the services that we were delivering, because it was trauma informed, because it's based on neuroscience, and it really focuses on how you regulate your biological responses to trauma. So it really fit nicely and dovetailed nicely into what our psychological first aid model was doing, which was not about focusing on the trauma, but focusing on the impact of the trauma. So it's based around invitational language, about asking someone if they would like to try something, and it's based on 6 skills that help someone remain within what they call the resilient zone by recognizing your biological responses and then regulating them. So when you experience a trauma at any different levels, so trauma from going to the dentist to being in a natural disaster to being a victim of crime, your body reacts in a similar way. So it's very much based in that the science of what a survival response is. Do you fight? Do you run away? Do you freeze? Do you flop, right? So after you've experienced that trauma, your body remembers that trauma and can then be triggered even when you're not in actual danger. So you are reacting as if you are in danger, but you're not in danger. So for instance, we've had people who will smell something or will hear something that triggers that trauma response, because it is, for them, that sight, that smell, that sound is very much related to what happened to them during their trauma. So what the community resilience model seeks to do then is use the 6 skills to be able to recognize what is happening, and then to regulate those responses and choose and really give the person an option and choice to shift their focus from the trauma to a place where they are thinking with their logical brain, as we would put it, and as opposed to their emotional brain. So when we were first looking at this and looking at it, we were going, is this too complicated? Is this, something that maybe is too based within the neuroscience? What is this about? But as we began exploring it and really looking at it, it became very clear that it was very much work that we were doing and the approach that we were already using, but gave us a very good structure and language to use. So we often say that the psychological first aid model provides the scaffolding and the community resiliency model provides the language. So it was something that we decided not only would we train our volunteers in, but we would train our entire organization in, because we felt that the workers who are dealing with trauma every day also are experience trauma in a sense. So it really speaks to that secondary trauma. And not only that, but we really felt this model would be useful for people even when they're not dealing with victims of crime every day, because they are still within the organization. And so they are, so for instance, we have trained our finance people, we have trained our IT people, we have trained our board members in it. So we've trained everyone from the board to the people who make the frontline calls to victims of crime. And the idea was that the entire organization would be embedded within this philosophy and be able to communicate not only with victims of crime, but also with each other in a way that didn't, or say in a way that maybe lessened the trauma of us interacting with each other in an office environment. And what we really liked about it was that when you're over the phone in particular, these are things that you can use over the phone. So even if you have a short time with someone, it's tools that you can use that can really take people from a heightened state to a state where they can actually talk and articulate what their needs are at that moment. So one example that we always use is one of our admin officers was calling to make an offer of service, which is a first contact with the client. We'd received the referral. He contacted her and she had answered the phone and she was in, he could tell that she was in a really heightened state. And it was because she had just seen the perpetrator. She was in a shop and the perpetrator of the crime had also been there. And so she was breathing irregularly. She was, couldn't really talk about anything other than the fact that she had just seen this person and she was feeling very unsafe. Now, there was no risk to her at that time because she was in a very public space. The perpetrator had actually left, so was no longer in the area. Hadn't said anything to her, but just seeing him had triggered a very heightened emotional response. And because of the training, the admin officer was able to talk her down to a point where she was able to get to a space where she felt safer. She was able to start to regulate her breathing. She was able to then discuss with him what he was calling her for. And then they were able to make an appointment, and then he was able to ensure that she was able to talk to someone else at that particular time for support, like, do you have a network of support? And so she was able to call her mother after that. So, and that all took place within a 10-minute window. So we just found that the more we trained our staff in this, the more effective we saw its effects more and more. So we also, in terms of the feedback, 100% of the people that we've trained, so our entire staff has been trained, have said that they would recommend it to a colleague, which is the first time in any training that we've had that. And that's one of those things, because whenever you're going out and you're training, especially people who have been in this line of work for quite a significant period of time, you're always kind of going, I'm not teaching you to suck eggs, as we would say here, but we really think that this would be effective. And so some of those training groups we were going in going, I'm not really sure if they're going to participate. I'm not sure if they're going to, how they're going to react to this, if this is going to be positive, if this is going to be a hard sell. But we've been delighted to find that people really take to it because they see the relevance immediately, and they see how it eases the way of having some of these conversations because of how the model has structured itself within the science and the language that it's developed around it. So those conversations become a lot more structured and a lot easier for them to have. So that is what we're doing at the moment. We have, we were delivering in-person trainings and then started delivering online trainings. And that was definitely a learning curve and a learning experience to go from what it meant to be in person to training delivery online. So every time we think we've cracked it, particularly some of the technical sides, we have a training session, and there's always something new that arises. But we've developed a workbook now that people can work on their own or work on with a colleague. We feel, I think, that we've been able to get it to the point where people find it useful, even on an online platform, which again is really something for us that was significant in terms of the model that we chose, and people feeling that attachment to the material that is so much harder when you're in a venue like Zoom or Teams. At the moment, what we're doing is we're developing a specific training module that will focus on how CRM is particularly effective for trauma that is experienced by victims of crime. So at the moment, CRM focuses just on trauma and no matter where that trauma comes from. The module that we're now developing, because of how effective it's been in our work, and because we believe that this is a really good way forward to support victims of crime in terms of this particular type of work, we are looking at how that module is very much based within the science around victimology and what victims of crime in particular experience and what their needs are, and then how the community resilience model can specifically address that. So that is where we are at and where we hope to go in the future. So watch this space, because certainly Victim Support Europe will be one of the organizations that we will be in conversation with and linking up with to help spread the word. But we thought it would be helpful for the time that we have with you to actually take you through one of the skills that's used within the community resiliency model, which is why I have my colleague here, because she's the expert as the trainer. And so what she's going to do is she'll take you through one of the skills. And so we really wanted this bit to be interactive. So don't be afraid to feedback, or if there's a question asked, to answer the question. So she's going to take you through one of the skills just to kind of show you what that looks like, and what that means when we're talking about using these skills to help you regulate what's going on inside. Okay, so Max, take it away.
Hi everybody, thanks Julina, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today with you. I have got a short space of time to talk about a model that takes a lot of time to get through. I've also got a short space of time to talk to you about a model that I totally love. So to keep myself on track, I have some notes, and I'm going to follow the notes rather than go off on a tangent as I usually do, because I want to make sure I cover with you everything that I need to cover to whet your appetite and to get you basically wanting to know a little bit more about the community resiliency model. Okay. So I just want to spend, I've got about 15-20 minutes, and I want to spend the first few minutes, really the first part, just reflecting on Victim Support Northern Ireland's clients. So just like everyone on earth, this is where I get very poetic, I guess, like everyone on earth, we are all totally unique. We all have our own stories. We're all shaped by our genetics, by our upbringing, and by our life experiences. And like everyone else, including our clients, we have gone through in life and will continue to go through ups and downs, because that is how life operates. Sadly, one of their experiences, one of their life experiences, our clients, has seen them become a victim of crime, of which you will totally understand where we're coming from here. And amongst other things, those clients have had, amongst other things, have had their nervous systems completely destabilized and dysregulated. They have been really thrown off course, and there's been a huge impact on them physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So this dovetails, as Julina says, this model that we're using, the community resiliency model, just dovetails beautifully into our service offering with these clients. But it's important that we put it out there at the start. This is what CRIM, the Community Resiliency Model, this is what it doesn't do. So it doesn't undo the event. It doesn't undo what has happened to our clients. It doesn't help us to change their past or take away what has happened to them. But here is the really fantastic thing about what CRIM actually does do and gives us the opportunity to do with our clients. So as we use the portal of their nervous system, it gives us to pass on to clients the opportunity to learn about the impact of trauma and stress on their bodies, to show them a set of wellness skills that will give them back what has been taken away, which has been choice. They've had something done to them. Their human rights have been violated. CRIM allows us to give them, through the wellness skills and the education of CRIM, something back. It gives them back choice, how to actually learn about their nervous system and how to regulate it, to deepen their resiliency levels and to cultivate wellness. Now, this takes time. We get a little window, as Julina said, we get a little window of time with our clients. But we are able to use that CRIM, the CRIM skills, effectively in that short window of time to give them something to walk away with that they can use. So it really is doable. We're using that. We're in a very privileged position with the Community Resiliency Model to be able to help our clients really move forward on the journey as they do move forward through the judicial system and then on towards the normality of life, whatever that looks like for them after having become a victim of crime. So what I want to do now is to move you into CRIM. And as Julina says, I'm actually going to take you through very quickly a couple of the concepts. So I'm really going to, just as I say, to whet your appetite. So we're looking at what we do in CRIM with our clients. As I'm interacting with you, it's how we would interact with our clients. And it really is starting at the very beginning, almost like the preface of a new story for our clients, so they can go away and rewrite the rest of the chapters of their life themselves. And we look at what's called, as Julina said, the resiliency zone. And that's where we start. So we're using your nervous system and we're talking about the resiliency zone. So as I'm talking to you now, I'm really going to start to invite you to work with me on this. So just for the next few minutes, I'm going to invite you to think of resiliency. So what does resiliency actually look like to you? What is your definition of resiliency? And as I'm talking, just either think it through, or we would invite you just to jot it down as I'm talking to you. So explore in your mind's eye your uniqueness as to what resiliency is. This is about giving you time to explore and to understand that term. And in CRIM, we use the language of sensation. So we take it beyond feelings. Every feeling has an emotion. Every emotion has a sensation attached to it in our physical bodies. It's a new way of looking at ourselves, I guess. And I will use with you, when I talk about resiliency, the language of sensation with pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So when we get our clients into a safe space and we start to ask you about your resiliency, we don't tell you what that is, we give you choice to think about what resiliency means to you. And when we get you into that safe space, I usually start to do this. So it's almost either we visualize this or we'll invite our clients to draw this on a piece of paper. And what I'm showing you, my hands are depicting what we call the resilience zone. So in that resilience zone, those two lines, if I can invite you just to think about when you're resilient, when you're functioning well, when you're in that zone, and it's not happy street, it's not perfect street, there will still be ups and downs. But when you're actually in that zone and functioning well, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And how are you behaving? Because we want our clients, we want you, I'm inviting you actually now just to think about when you're resilient, what does it actually look like? What does it feel like for you when you're in that zone? And then what I would do with you is then I would invite you to think about when you're in that zone and to think about how you're feeling. Notice what's going on inside. Are there any pleasant sensations right now? Now, I appreciate this is brand new to you, but work with me on this because it does work really well. So pleasantly at the minute, my legs actually feel quite pleasant and my tummy feels quite pleasant. So I'm starting now to regulate and notice my own nervous system in a way I've never done before. And likewise, when we look at what's in our resilience zone and what we look like when we're in it, I'm going to ask you just to invite you to think about what it might look like when you get bumped out. So maybe bumped out into the high zone, out of your zone, or bumped into the low zone. Because there are occasions when we will get bumped out. As Jolene has said, our victims of crime can be triggered just by certain things. And we want to start to educate them on what does it look like when you're in your zone? What does it look like when you're bumped out of your zone? And the language of sensation around that would be, starting to spot and notice feelings of sensations of unpleasantness or maybe just neutrality. And it's not to be frightened of those feelings and sensations, but just to learn to recognize them. And the absolute beauty of CRIM, when we look at the resiliency zone, the beauty of this is that we're inviting clients for the first time. It's not a cognitive approach. It's not a top-down. There's nothing wrong with that approach. It works beautifully. But this is such a different approach because this is using our nervous systems. And what we're doing is we're inviting clients to take control of their nervous systems. To recognize for the first time ever when you're in your zone, and then recognize when you're out of your zone. Don't be frightened by that. Take control and choose then using the CRIM skills, which I'm going to talk to you about at least one of them in a second. But to be able, when you get bumped out of your zone and your emotional brain has gone and playing havoc and your logical brain has gone, is to recognize that you're bumped out. To recognize that maybe Jolena right now has bumped me out of my zone. Or someone has done something on me and bumped me out. But you know what? I now fully understand what that means. And I'm going to take back control. And through the use of a CRIM skill, I'm going to put myself back into my resiliency zone. I've had something done to me in the past that has dysregulated me. And now I fully understand myself in a whole new way. And I am taking back what has been taken away from me. And I will decide what my resiliency zone looks like and when I'm bumped out of it. And the beauty of this, as Julina said, we've rolled this out to everyone in our organisation, and we now use this language throughout our organisation. So we have a joined up approach with one another. We're not frightened to talk about when emotionally we get a down day or we get a down moment. And we recognise that we've been bumped out of our zones. It makes us so much more productive and effective with one another to be able to say, I've actually been bumped out of my zone. I'm not concentrating properly right now. I'm not in a good space. You need to give me some time. And we've been able to do that with staff and volunteers. And then they're able to pass those skills on to clients. How enabling is that? It's absolutely amazing. So that's the very first basic concept of CRIM. And we spend a lot of time working around resiliency and what it means, because that's the starting point and that's the ending point, getting us back to work on our resiliency levels. And from there, then that takes me to the wellness skills. So as Jolina has said, there are 6 wellness skills within CRIM. And again, to me, someone who doesn't like being told what to do, I love the fact there's choice. There are 6 skills, so I get to choose which skill I want to use. So I use the palm of my hand to demonstrate the CRIM skills. As I say, there's 6 of them, and it starts with tracking Tracking sits in the palm of our hand. It's the foundational one, the one I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about. So we have tracking, and then we have resourcing, and we have grounding, and we have gesturing, and we have help now, and we have shift and stay. 6 fabulous skills that we can deploy, that we can pass on to staff and volunteers, to pass on to clients, and then clients get to choose whichever skills suit them. Now, I love the resiliency zone, and I love the tracking. So that's the skill that I'm going to spend just the next few minutes talking to you about. So as I do that, I'm going to invite you, like I did just to think about your resiliency. Now I'm going to just invite you to try the tracking with me. So what I'd like you to do now, if I may, is just invite you just to breathe. Just take a nice big deep breath and just place yourself right into the moment. Just be with me now in the moment. And then what I'm going to invite you to do is just very gently, just track your system, your body, from the top of your head through to your toes. Just move up and down, and then all I'm going to do is just get you to notice what is happening on the inside. Just keep breathing with me and stay in the moment with me, but just track what is happening and what are you noticing on the inside. So I'm going to throw to Jolena just as my little kind of guinea pig, just very quickly to say, Jolena, what are you noticing of anything in the inside? Is there anything pleasant going on the inside?
Yes, I'm feeling very calm, and I think it's because anytime we start talking about the skills and like the tracking, I start to kind of like start readjusting my body to get into a more comfortable position because I'm more aware of it. So my calves in particular are feeling very rested and relaxed, which is not usual. Like, you know, it's not necessarily where I would normally kind of have feelings, but they're nice and warm and cozy.
Perfect. Thank you, Jolena. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm just going to invite Jolena just to stay with that. She's just found somewhere inside that's pleasant. It's part of our nervous system, and she's just found something. So using myself as well, pleasant, as I've said earlier, my tummy and my legs are quite pleasant. My tummy has just got nice sensations of butterflies, which is fine, and my legs are quite stable. And what we also look at when we track, now we need to be careful because we don't want to trigger anyone, but we want people, our clients, not to be overwhelmed or afraid, but to also, when they're tracking, that if they do spot parts of them that feel unpleasant, to recognize it. Don't be frightened and don't be overwhelmed, just recognize it, and then move to parts of the body that are more pleasant. Move to little islands of safety. So right now, unpleasantness, because I'm doing this today and I've been prepping and getting myself psyched up to do this today with you guys, my heart has actually not stopped racing. So it's quite unpleasant and my feet are quite cold. But yet what I did, even traveling down here today, I tracked my system all the way down. I tracked and I would have felt unpleasantness as my heart pumped and my feet were cold. But then I took a choice to regulate that and move back to more pleasant sensations, which is my tummy and my legs. And that, although it's so simplistic, it's totally wrapped up in psychoeducation and neuroscience. I am actually simplistically tracking my nervous system. I am taking notice and choice of where I move to. I could stay in my tummy, I could stay in my feet, I could stay with the unpleasantness, but why would I want to do that? But no one's making me, no one's prodding me. I'm just moving from pleasant to unpleasant. And what we talk about is we talk about islands of safety. So if we can get our clients starting to recognize little islands of pleasantness when they track, then move to those. When you're walking to the courtroom, when you're walking in to give your best evidence, breathe and track in to the parts of your body that feel more pleasant. When you're sitting in the chair and you're giving your best evidence, and the world and his partners are watching you, notice what's happening on the inside and move to more positions that are within you that are more pleasant. And it's a very quick snapshot that we're giving you today. But the resiliency zone and the tracking are my favorites, and I have used them. Before I even started to use them on my clients, I spent quite a bit of time using these skills on myself. And now I instinctively will just get feelings of pleasantness or unpleasantness very quickly at any time. And I'm very in tune to that now, and then I just choose to move to more positions of pleasantness, if you like. So practicing tracking and practicing the other CREM skills, what has it done? Well, what it's done for me, what it's done for our staff, what it's done for our clients, it actually helps to deepen their resiliency. It introduces them to themselves and their nervous systems in a whole new way. It helps them make choice about cultivating wellness and growing in confidence. And the most important thing for me, having had what has been done to them, the CREM skills helps me to give them something that they can take away, take back control then of their life story, and rewrite future chapters the way they want to write them. Even when stuff happens in life, because it will, hopefully not ever a victim of crime again, but stuff will happen. But as you deploy these skills, you absolutely, through CREM, you learn to deepen your resiliency zones and be able just to cope with the life's ups and downs moving forward. And that's very much a little snapshot of CREM. So thank you so much for your attention. And thank you, Julina, for picking on you just to do that little bit of tracking with me. Thank you.
So that's the first skill that we would normally talk about. And while we're very much focused on what that particular skill was, one of the things that we would do in a session is try and integrate that naturally into a conversation. So as you're sitting there, rather than going, I'm going to do community resiliency with you now, and this is what it looks like, it's very much like, I noticed that when you're sitting there, like your shoulders are really hunched forward. And so as we're talking with people, we start to be able to recognize, oh, this person has leaned back into their chair, their shoulders have come down, their breathing has slowed down. So all of that is part of the tracking for our volunteers who are doing an emotional support session with that person to be able to say, I am seeing this being effective and being able to meet this person where they're at. Because a lot of times people will come in and they'll be so upset or they'll have so much emotion or be in such a heightened state that you can't even begin to have that conversation of, here are your options, here's what we can do to support you, because they are so in their trauma. And so this just really helps bring them down. And that's part of the help now that Margaret had mentioned there, was that help now is very much a circuit breaker. So I see that you seem to be very upset, you seem to be very distressed. Would you like to drink a glass of water? As you're drinking that water, how does that feel in your throat? How does that feel in your mouth? So again, really taking it back to that sensation language and that understanding of what that does. And it then just takes things from your emotional brain where you don't understand language or logic, which is what happens when you're experiencing a trauma, to a logical brain where you can start to think about things and start to understand why your body is reacting in that way. And what we've noticed when we're working with clients, just them understanding why they are reacting this way gives them so much more confidence and understanding that they are not on their own, that they are not going crazy, that it's a perfectly natural reaction, that your body is in stress and that your body is in survival mode. And we've just really found like even establishing that understanding for them has been so effective as they start their journey of recovery. So that's us. So any questions we can answer, we will certainly try. And if we cannot, then we will make sure to get the information to you.
Thank you both so much. Knut was just asking for some resources, so I've just shared 2 links. I think one is from the official website and another one is from a trauma resource institute.
Yes.
Yes, are there questions, comments, feedback?
All right, so just are all the clients open to this method? So as with anything, I think for us, it is really that idea of the invitational part of it. So when we say to someone, I'm just going to invite you to try this, if the person goes, no, I don't want to do that, what are you talking about? Obviously, we don't then go, well, no, you have to try this because this is what we're doing now. So I think we've had so far a very positive response, simply because the way we try and approach it is not necessarily going, I am going to practice these skills with you, and this is what we're going to do now, but it's more of, can I ask, would this be helpful to you, or would you like to try this? And thus far, we haven't had anyone feedback to us that a client has been against it. I think people feel that it has been effective, and there hasn't really been anyone that has felt that it was a waste to even at least try it, which I think is good for what we're trying to do with this. Okay, sorry. Do volunteers also use this? So the rollout of this is we've been rolling it out throughout the organization, and we are now starting to roll it out to our volunteers. Our original plan in 2018 was so what we're going to do is we're going to have everyone trained within 2 months, and then we'll start the volunteers and it'll be great. And then obviously COVID was like, that's not going to happen. So we have spent the past year really focusing on how to make this an effective training in an online format. And the staff, in all honesty, have been the guinea pigs in some sessions. Like the very first staff group that we trained was, there were cameras going off and on, there were children screaming in the background, there was, we were figuring out how to mute people and unmute people. So that was and then, the materials, and they probably, if you were to ask that first group, they would have been like, I have no idea what that was about. It was absolute chaos. So what we started to do was really refine that. And so as we are now rolling it out to volunteers, they will start using this. And the trainings that we have, you have a first session, which will be 4-hour session that really focuses in on the theory. So talks about neuroscience, like what do you mean when you say, oh, don't choose to focus on the pleasantness or the unpleasantness? Like, how do people do that? And so it really talks about how you can recreate those pathways in your brain and start to shift away from focusing on the trauma to focusing on the pleasant, and really focuses on the nervous system and all of that. And then the second session that we do is very much based in practitioner. So even as the Netherlands was talking about in their presentation, that idea of like showing it how it works. We're looking at how we develop videos, and actually doing sessions with people as if they were in clients to be able to show that. So the second level is practitioners. And then what we're going to develop is a 1-year kind of booster training to do that. So because we want this to be something sustainable, and it's always going on, it's never like, oh, we've reached an endpoint now and you're never going to see this again. It's very much what we're wanting to do is kind of build it into an organic growth of the organization's philosophy as we head forward. That's all the questions in the chat, I think.
Does anyone else want to ask a question? You can also ask it more in person. Edward's asking about the pitfalls of the method.
I think as with any, and you know, if there's anything, because I know in the beginning, this was something that we talked about in terms of buying into what this method was and whether or not this was the right method for us, because in some ways, when you're looking at it, it's almost, for me, when I was looking at it, I was kind of going, this just seems too simplistic. Like it just seems like it's not really taking on board the effect that trauma has on people, and it can't be this simple. So I think one of the tricks is about how we present this in a way that allows people to understand the science and the theory behind it, as well as understanding the idea behind the skills, is that you can't just do it one time and then it's going to be something automatic for you. It's really, the skills are just what they say, they're skills. So if you don't practice them, they're not going to be effective. And I think sometimes for us, what we're trying to do with people with the short amount of time that we have with them is we'll introduce something to them, but if they don't practice it, or if they don't feel like they're in a place to take on board what we're talking about, then they won't necessarily see the benefits of it in the way that we want them to. So I think there is something about that we, when we're doing this directly with clients, how we work on that and how we convey that. So one of the things for future development, we'll be offering sessions to clients, like training sessions to clients, so that they would be receiving the same sessions that the staff and volunteers would be receiving, to kind of embed it a little bit more. Obviously, it would be maybe more victim focused in terms of like examples and maybe the exercise that we go through, but the idea is that we would have that platform for victims to be able to participate that in a more meaningful way as well. Because I think for me, that's one of the things, is that they are great skills, and I see the benefit of them as one of the training deliverers, because I'm constantly having to talk about them and practice them so that I can show other people and kind of know about it. And so I've noticed that within myself and with staff that I interact with. As I start to use the language, I can see it in them, because they are very conscious of it and they are using it, and we're constantly talking about it in the organization. But when we're talking about it with victims who we maybe have an hour with, and then maybe that's their only appointment, how we then convey, like, this is very useful, but you do have to practice that. How do we, you know, pass that on to them, I think is one of the ones that we're still looking at, how we crack that. And I don't know, Mags, if there's anything in particular.
No, it's perfect. The only thing that I would say, and the Trauma Resource Institute will be quite clear on this, the community resiliency model is definitely, it's a super model, but it's not a one-stop shop. It's not a substitute for trauma counselling or anything like that, but it is an absolute, it's just a little kit bag, or a little model that you can use with other models to kind of help an individual. So it's not a one-stop shop, would be the only pitfall for anyone to think that this is it. This is going to be a cure-all. It's not, you know, but again, it is a fabulous model, and we have seen good results, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, we do follow-ups. So we would offer, just in terms of general services, we offer up to 3 sessions of emotional support sessions, as we call them. If people really are kind of going, oh, I want more than this, or I feel like I need more than this, what we try and do is kind of move them on to counseling, because really what we're saying is, if you need us after more than 4 sessions, you're starting to get to that point where you're going, really, you probably want to look into something a little bit more formal in terms of counseling, because what we're here to do is to get you from the immediate aftermath. So we make contact with people within 2 days of us receiving a referral. so very often very fresh that the crime has happened, to be able to getting them to the place where they feel like, right, so I know what my options are, I know what's going to happen next, I have the information that I need to access, and I've been able to kind of talk about that and feel like I am able to function at this point and to the next step. If people aren't feeling that way after 3 sessions and they're kind of going, oh, I'd like a 4th or a 5th, then we're starting to go, you probably need something that's more counseling based. One of the things that the skills helps us do is go, right, so you know, in the 2nd session, we maybe can talk a little bit more about that, and then, you know, you have these skills to help regulate yourself until you can get to a counseling appointment. So as Margaret's saying, it's really about, you know, giving people the skills to practice that, to keep themselves regulated and in a functional capacity until maybe they can access counseling. It's not the end, it's just something that you can use as you're going on your journey. Is it the only thing we do? No, I mean, I think for us, as we're saying, you know, it is a toolkit. So it is something that we see as these are very valuable tools, and it's something that we can use with each other as staff. It's something that we can use with victims, but we have a range of victims that would come to us. So obviously we would look at what is going to be the best approach in those. So while the CRIM model is a thread throughout all of our work, we also would do, so we have a service for sexual violence victims of sexual violence, both children and adults. So they would do a longer term advocacy. So they might have someone on their client list for a year or 2 years, you know, kind of depending on where they're at in that process when they come to us. So the community services where this is based is really looking at kind of that short-term intervention. The witness service, you might only see that person for a day. So the witness service, when they are looking at these skills, they really focus on what are short-term interventions that we can help with that person. So one of the skills that they mainly use would really be the help now skills, which are very quick circuit breaker types of interventions. And then they're really focusing on just getting that person to be able to go into court and to give the best evidence that they can give. So the CRIM model might not be the most effective thing to be using on that person at that time. So it really is, we try and have the common thread and the common language through all of our services, but it's really looking at, depending on the service that person is accessing, what is going to be the most effective help for them.
Any last question? Oh, I think Janice, you are muted.
Oh, no, she's not allowed to ask questions. She's working.
No, I'm not going to ask any questions. Thank you, guys. I'm just going to say that as a member of victim support staff in Northern Ireland, I don't ordinarily meet with victims on a daily basis. So one of the things that I find that the CRIM model gave me, being trained into that, was actually confidence in terms of actually, meeting clients and being able to offer them something very, very practical if I had to. So having the ability to recognize and also then to offer, a very practical approach whenever I was recognizing, areas that I thought that, the CRM model would be beneficial to them. So even at a higher level, which was why we felt it was really important that, that this was a bottom-up, top-down approach, that every member of our team, including our board, bought into this approach, was very, very important for us as a cultural thing, and that has worked very well. And Juliana has touched on the longer term services that we offer in terms of our sexual violence for adults and children. Again, staff have been trained to use that in those models, which would provide that longer term intervention.